What's up, guys? Okay, we're gonna try to do this a little bit. We're gonna try to do this. We're gonna see if I got the endurance. I can pause this, right? I think so. All right. So first of all, welcome to Cosmos Sessions. It is another one with me, Jeshi. Welcome, 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 welcome. Okay, what's happening, people? Welcome to Cosmos Sessions. So today we're talking about Saturn. So we're going to see if I got the legs for doing Saturn in all 12 houses. So let's jump right in. So Saturn obviously is the planet of restriction, the planet of karma, and it represents whatever house you have Saturn in is an area of life where you might feel some of this energy of being pulled back, especially the first 30 years. But it's also an area of life where you can be very proficient in if you learn the lessons that Saturn's trying to teach you in that realm of life. So it'll make more sense as I go one by one. You can check your own charts to know where, if you don't know where your Saturn is, just figure it out. Go on Google, search, calculate my natal chart, and you can easily find where what house your Saturn's in. So yeah, anyways, okay, so 140, I'm writing on this paper as usual. So first house, okay, so first house Saturn, so it does depend if it's on the ascendant or just in the first house, but generally, first house Saturn can have difficulty with self-expression early on, especially if their parents, were strict, or if they grew up with parents that kind of restricted them in that way. And there can be also some physical inadequacies felt early on in childhood, or just early on in life. And yeah, just a lot of times people with that, they feel constrained by something physically, and also it depends on the sign a lot too, right? So it could be about putting themselves out there. It's in the first house, which is linked with Aries. So a lot of people I know with Saturn first house are quite shy, and they can struggle to feel good in their own skin, to be authentic, and also they over time become very, very good, reliable, hardworking people. And Saturn gets better with age. So a lot of Saturn rising people or Saturn first house people start looking better post 30, post 31. So that's good. And one of the key lessons is about defending yourself, defending your own boundaries. I think that for people with first house Saturns, it would be very, very good to learn some kind of martial art or something that gets you feeling strong in your own self-assertion. Okay. So next we have Saturn the second. So a lot of people with Saturn the second were born to poor families. Not all of them, but it's common, and they oftentimes get used to surviving on minimal resources. And even I've seen it so many times, even when they can become very, very financially well off, right? But oftentimes, and obviously depends on the whole chart, they have trouble. Like, I can think of several people who have become multimillionaires who started out really, really poor with this placement, who have trouble spending any money. They're still spending money like they're super, super broke, like they were before, because they have this fear, and it's almost this emotional, or this poverty, that's in the mind, right? So a lot of people with that, there can be a lot of fear of losing, what they've worked so hard to achieve. And they're very hard workers. Sometimes any Saturn's second house, any of the Earth houses for Saturn's 2, 6, 10 can be workaholics for sure. And I think a lot of people with this, they tend to have that paycheck to paycheck lifestyle until their Saturn return, and then things get easier, right? But also second house is self-esteem. So a lot of people with this sometimes have low self-esteem, and even when it comes to their own business life, they can have trouble charging money and feeling like they're worthy, even if they're like the best at what they do, right? So it takes time, as everything gets better with time with Saturn. And you learn to value yourself with this placement, and you learn about self-confidence, and not to tie your self-worth with how much money you make, right? So yeah. A lot of times, like with the Saturn second house, it's not a get rich scheme, right? It is gradual over time. So, Saturn delays but never denies is the saying, right? Right. Okay, so Saturn in the third, where do we get time wise? Saturn in the third oftentimes has to do with communication. I've seen a lot of people with that who had a very, who had a very tough time with shit. How am I gonna do this? I have to go to my charger mid video. Yeah, so Saturn the third, a lot of times they are they have some type of issue with communication, and sometimes early on they were made to feel like their brain, their way of thinking, their way of speaking was not enough. So it's this life challenge to build confidence in their voice, right? Also, usually finding friends doesn't come easy. So they just have to get really, really, really good at putting themselves out there. Now I have to pause this. Get my charger. Hold on. Okay, we're back. Save the day. So, anyways, so yeah, Saturn third house can definitely takes a lot of effort, and I've seen a lot of people with communication issues, and they want to be very sure about what they are, studying, what they're learning, what they're speaking of before they put it out there. They had that prudence usually around that. So yeah. Hey Esme, you want to join me? Stay here. So Esme's joined. What do you want to say about third house Saturn? You don't have your Saturn. Where's your Saturn again? Is it 12th house? That's Mika's. But I think, yeah, Saturn third house, they're very good problem solvers. And they, Esme. And they're also, yeah, they're very good. Also, it can have sort of a gloomy effect on the mind. That's another thing to remember. Kind of melancholic thoughts sometimes. So yeah, it's really good, really important to find the humor in life. And third house also rules. I've had a lot of clients who have this, who had trauma and middle school, kind of middle school, high school, not really high school as much, but yeah, just as they were growing up, being bullied, having a hard time in school as they were growing up, right? And just feeling lonely as a kid and feeling very, very misunderstood. A lot of times I see this correlated with other things in their astrology, that like a Uranus square of Mercury or something like that. Okay, so fourth house is a very big one. because wow, Esme, nice. Because it matters a lot if it is on the IC or not. If it's on the IC, right, the most bottom part of the chart, that's a big, big deal. On any of the angles, any of the outer planets, very, very strong. So I would say if it's the closer is the IC, the more it is an important planet for you. If it's on your IC, oh my God, Esme. Hey, don't bite my painting, Esme. Stay right there, Esme. 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 I see what you're doing. Come here. You're such a show off, Esme. Okay. If you guys don't follow Esme, it's at Esme Astrology on Instagram. She's gonna have her own content coming out pretty soon. Just need to get her to speak. So anyways, yeah, so Saturn I see people a lot of times their parents, they come from families that very, very constraining, very perfectionist, and they can be very self-limiting, the individuals with this. Fourth house represents the childhood as well, right? So it's usually a childhood that didn't feel free and that didn't allow the person to express themselves and to really, really get out there in life. So I think a lot of times people with this come from a pretty cold family. And yeah, they just usually didn't feel that they could get that love, that warm love, consistent warm love from their parents. So I've seen a lot of people with this who have this sort of, it can really show up in their adult relationships, this codependency, or feeling like their love, that their receiving of love is conditional and it's based on how well they do at something like that, right? So it can create people who try to people please and whatnot. So, very karmic relationships with the parents. Sometimes it feels like they're the ones that have to nurture their parents. And I would say that people with this placement usually have painful memories from childhood that can make it difficult for them to establish themselves or their own families later on in life. But a lot of times that is, that is the goal, right? To kind of give your children or your family what you were not given. So also with this, you have to watch out for like kind of being too much in the past, right? And allowing that past energy to keep you away from moving forward. So yeah. So yeah, I'm trying to think. I feel like most people I know with this, they have to work really hard when it comes to emotional nourishment and how they're able to give that to themselves. And there's usually there's always karmic reasons for it. So you know, uh, Saturn in any water house is very, very, yeah. So I can make a full video about that. I'm trying not to go down rabbit holes. So yeah. Yeah. What else can I share? I would say with any planet on the IC, like any other planet, whatever that represents has to be resolved because it's opposite your midheaven. It has to be resolved in order for you to truly move forward with your career in the best way possible. And yeah, so resolving the past is really, really important for sure. And yeah, what else? I've seen people with this be very good in real estate. I'm just thinking of random things right now. Yeah, I can't really think of anything else. Yeah, loneliness as a child is common. Oh yeah, another one. A lot of times I've seen like a huge age gap between the child. Like I've seen people with this as only children, or just with a massive age gap um, between them and their parents. So it'd be quite lonely. Okay, that one was a long one. So fifth house Saturn, that's where I got mine. So fifth house Saturn can just be kind of a killjoy. Obviously you have to look at the whole chart, but by itself, it can be quite restraining. Like the person at the party who just can't let go and have fun, giving a rather, a more serious approach to life. So what I always say with this one when I see people with is, how can you turn what you do for fun into your work, right? I'm a good example of that. Astrology is fun for me. I've turned it into my work. But I do also in my chart have a lot of very fun planets. That's why you can't just take one of these placements by itself. You really have to look at everything. People with fifth house usually are not the types usually to just hook up and have one night stands. Because fifth house rules that early part of the relationship. But a lot of people, born around the late 80s, early 90s, will have Saturn, Neptune, Uranus in the same house, which can, that just makes it very, very interesting. And it kind of makes that, if they're in the same house, the energy is just all over the place. So, yeah. And yeah, so people with this can just have a hard time being spontaneous, a hard time being with their inner child. Even with children itself, it can delay having children. So, yeah. So sixth house Saturn, definitely another one that can create workaholics. People who I've seen a lot of people with this who struggle early on. Kind of in that same second house way where they just really have to grind, 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 grind. So, it feels comfortable there because it's an earth sign, but people with that can sometimes, yeah, I mean, they're very, very, very good workers, but sometimes they can put too much of that energy there, as I said, right? And with that, success, they can be such hard workers, but success can be, pushed until post Saturn return or later in life. So it can be very frustrating. They feel like they're working, 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 and the material success isn't following them, right? So yeah, there can be all kinds of stuff too with like employers like not being appreciated enough, and just a lot of karmic payback through the work they're doing is how I would look at it. So yeah, there's different people. Like I said, it's hard to do this with different charts. It means so many different things, but people with this generally do care about the world, and yeah. So then also sixth house is daily routines. So it makes daily routines very important to this individual, and they prefer to have a job that's stable. They don't like to change the routines very much. Very organized and good planners. And then sixth house is also about health, right? So people here who, if they're pushing if they are working and pushing their body too much and it's not in line with their karma and what they're supposed to be doing, then a lot of times they'll have health issues that will come up, right? It can sometimes give some chronic health issues, and things that I've talked to a lot of people who had some health issue as a child or when they were younger, and then it went away. That's just something I've noticed. And yeah, so it really pushes that person to be very health oriented and have a lot of really good habits. And yeah. So, okay, this is a marathon. So Saturn the seventh. So Saturn the seventh house, house of relationships. It can give, most people I know with Saturn the seventh house don't have relationships, good relationships until their Saturn return or after the Saturn return, and a lot of times they do end up having very, very positive ones at that point. They can definitely fear commitment in relationships, but I've seen it in a lot of people who it feels almost like karmic punishment because they want nothing more than relationships, and it's just like Saturn the seventh, and they just have no luck in that area. But things change. Saturn, if you do what Saturn wants, it gives you good rewards. So I would say like the attitude, yes, the attitude towards relationships is more serious, and lots of lessons in love too. Like a lot of people I've met with this, they have to learn that lesson of the difference between codependency and independence, and find that good middle ground, right? And I've definitely seen a lot, like I said, a lot of codependency here because things aren't really working out and they want them to work out, so sometimes they'll accept less than they should be accepting. So yeah. Okay. So then 8th house. So 8th house Saturn, another interesting one, another water house. It can definitely make, I've seen 8th house Saturn be very linked to vulnerability issues. It's a very sexual, very intimate house, right? So sometimes people with that can resist the transformations that are needed in life, or even diving into things like the esoteric and the occult. And and also Saturn in the 8th and 12th especially can bring up a lot of unconscious fears and phobias and whatnot that the person has. And really there's just like a lot of dedication that person has in facing their own shadow. So yeah. And oftentimes people with this placement, they are unaware of their fears. So it's kind of that process of diving in and really figuring out what it's all about. Oh yeah, it's really important for 8th house Saturn people to not create debt. That can be very, very bad. And just anything with contracts and what's and all that, to just be careful with it. And Yeah, I would say mm, people with it tend to have a long life because the 8th house is, house of death. So Saturn can literally extend life. And yeah, sometimes people with this, learn lots of lessons around death, metaphoric and physical. So sometimes they lose someone during their Saturn return, someone important, not always. And yeah, there's just this deep understanding of life, death, crisis, transformation, and it can give a very good healing talent. I've seen a lot of healers who have this, but usually they become healers after the Saturn return. And yeah, and the whole thing with intimacy, people sometimes with this can, yeah, really just have a fear of that, and um, being vulnerable, letting themselves go in that way. So yeah, sometimes they can just decide to not commit at all, just because of that fear of intimacy. So yeah. Okay. 9th house Saturn. The 9th house Saturn. A lot of astrologers I've noticed have that, and people who do this type of work. And I've noticed a lot of people with this have had religion pushed on them a lot when they're younger. Not all, but there's this feeling of, usually really, really wanting to break free from that. And, but also because for the first 30 years, 9th house is truth, wisdom, all that. It can sort of, traveling, great learnings that can lead to wisdom. So it can actually block that for the first 30 years. So it can be difficult in that regard. Um, so yeah, I mean, just in terms of the idea of the 9th house is really about expanding your horizons. It can, yeah, people with Saturn there can be more into the old and the traditional. So yeah, there's definitely people who have this who, where that kind of keeps them away from um, letting go of the old and making space for the new. So yeah, but then if they do, obviously depending on the rest of their chart, they can take that once they start to get some type of illumination of illumination. They can take that idea of really learning higher truth and all of that to a very, very high level, right? Which is why you see a lot of astrologers and people, teachers of all types with that kind of placement. And yeah, there can, Saturn can give a lot of stamina, persistence in that, in that seeking out of truth, right? So Saturn 10th. So that's, the best place to have your Saturn, especially, on the midheaven. It is in its domicile here, so definitely can create workaholics, um, where they want to invest a lot of their energy into their career, and they're just bosses, they're just people that command respect um, from a young age even, and they are people who work hard to to be given a lot of they're able to take a lot of responsibility, and um yeah, very they're not people who are going to cheat and cut corners to get to where they need to get. Like they will do what they need to do, right? They will take it step by step. um Very, very ambitious, hardworking, persistent people. And yeah, just like lots of yeah, they're just determined, and they're people who are who people come to them in times of, hey, you again. In time, yeah, they're the like the judges and the CEOs and the all kinds of positions like that. So yeah, just like the achievement of goals, and a lot of times, there is that delayed gratification with that anything with Saturn, but they just keep working, 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 working. And um, because it's on the midheaven is how you're seen also by the masses. So they're seen, by the masses as an authority figure. A lot of times their best success does come in the second part of life, but um, yeah, really good for career. Mhm. Okay, so 11th house. So we're getting close. As we don't mess up my setup. The 11th house Saturn. I've noticed that they can be very careful with who they're friends with. They're not just going to accept someone. Okay, let's make a shot. Yeah, so they're not just going to accept someone just for the sake of it, right? They, they definitely want, they care. They also have like a very deep, um, because 11th house also rules your larger than life hopes and wishes and massive goals, right? So like your greatest dreams. So there can be delays in that, right? So the it can definitely create late bloomers. And it's because you're very unique, so you're really trying to find. So yeah, it can definitely create people who are quite lonely, but you're really trying to find people who vibrate the same frequency as you, right? And it's not so easy. Um, so yeah, what's up, Esme? So I mean, people with this, like I said, like especially in large groups of people, it's pretty difficult for them, and they can kind of have some type of like anxiety in. I can't think of one. eh, Maybe a few, but like most people 11th house Saturns, I feel like they like large groups of people. Usually they're not a fan. But yeah, like I said, if they have a Sag moon, you can kind of switch that all up. Um, mm, 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 Yes, man. I think also when it comes to friends, they can sometimes take friends and friendships and all that too seriously, I've noticed. And that can not be the best thing when you're taking socializing so seriously, you know? So, but yeah, but at the same time, the thing is that they do like they take it seriously with it, and because of that, they are very very good friends, right? So, a lot of times they meet their friends in more businessy environments, and yeah, they're very very loyal people, and yeah. All right, so now we're at the 12th house Saturn. This one is very interesting. Last one. Um, so Saturn in the 12th house is a very, very difficult placement. Put this camera back up here. Mainly because you're dealing with a lot. It's a very karmic placement. And it can definitely push someone to be quite pessimistic, quite self-limiting, where they're afraid to dream, and yeah, almost a lot of times people with this, there is something with the mother's birth or something in that process, or even not being wanted as a child. I've heard that from clients where they're like, yeah, my mom didn't want me to come into this world, stuff like that. So yeah, it can, and if there's a traumatic birth itself, it can create that perinatal trauma, which can create a lot of fear in life in general, like that kind of energy of leaving the womb, right? It can just feel really difficult to, so it can create very big loners, right? People who just want to stick to themselves. I've seen it show up in addiction a good amount too. Now, if it is well aspected, right, it can push a lot of the more difficult parts of this away. But people with this tend to be better in isolation. And what happens is that there can be lots of unconscious guilt and lots of unconscious worrying that the person takes on and feels, and a lot of times they feel responsible for things that they should not feel responsible for, right? So it can bring lots of anxiety, lots of depression, melancholy, and they can just kind of suffer in solitude. They can sometimes feel like not feel like wanting to talk about this with other people, and sometimes even someone who on some level enjoys their suffering. So it really is, like it's like really difficult for them to just let go and relax and not be stuck in the past, and to find forgiveness for themselves and all that. And then also insomnia is a big thing for the 12th house Saturn, right? There can, and just like, because it's a sleep, and then also it can block that, it can block access to the unconscious, or to the intuition, to the world of imagination, right? So after 30, this can, Saturn return, if you've done a lot of spiritual work, this can change, right? It can create nightmares too. So, and then a lot of times, Saturn father figure was lacking from the life oftentimes. And yeah, and like I said, it usually creates the person who would rather just hide their vulnerabilities from the world, right? They feel like they don't want to burden people with that. So yeah, obviously with 12th house, it depends how close. If it's really close to the ascendant, then it performs more like a first house Saturn, right? Where people perceive you as, rigid and reserved, regardless of how you really are. And yeah, just really, really sensitive, right? Especially to kind of the collective unconscious. So yeah, I think with this, like being able to be in the right environment is very important. To be able to do the right type of work, work that's helping other people. Because yeah, there's usually a very hidden source of pain here, right? And it's hard to know where does that come from, right? So yeah, definitely psychotherapy, any kind of healing, it definitely pushes people on that healing journey. So people with this, a lot of times, they become more open to their spirituality post Saturn return, and that opens up a whole thing. All right. Well, thank you. That was a long video. So let me know what you guys think. Obviously, with each placement, there's a lot more I could have said, but I'm only one human. So yeah, let me know what your experience, what you would add, what you would take away with your Saturn placement. And like I said, it always matters what house it's in, or what house sign, what aspects it makes, and how it interacts with the rest of your chart. What's aspecting Saturn. That's why you should always consider getting a reading by someone like myself. If you are interested, it's jessenisonastrology.com. Will be linked in the bio, maybe up here if my editor puts it up here. And yeah, I'll talk to you guys later. Ciao, ciao.